Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Story Ship Podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sean Driscoll, and I have something really kind of unique for you today. I've got an original story, a story I wrote nearly 22 years ago. It's called Great Bear, and it's from my CD, Critter Tales. It has some pretty intense scenes in it of fighting, so if you have little ones, you may want to move on to another episode of our podcast. But I think you'll find it a very exciting adventure. Let's have a listen. The Golden Tears of Great Bear. Where I live down south on the coast of Georgia, moss hangs from the mighty oak trees like honey dripping from a spoon. And in the evenings, when the amber sun sets, it glows golden. Well, I've heard it told that if you have the ability to taste honey out of that moss, why, you can taste the full sweetness of life itself. Well, once my 4-year-old nephew came to visit me and asked, "Uncle Sean, what's hanging in those trees?" So I told him this story. It was the best thing I could come up with and perhaps makes more sense than any scientific explanation. Now, if you look up in the winter night sky, you can find a group of bright stars known as Orion Hunter. And the hunter's known in many different lands by many names, but I like to think of him just as the hunter. You can also find another group of stars known as the Big Dipper. But if you look more closely, you'll see Great Bear. Well, the hunter and Great Bear didn't always live in the sky. Many years ago, they dwelt on the earth. And this is the story of how they met their fate in heaven and the legacy they left behind. The hunter was the greatest hunter in all the world, and the animals knew and feared him well. But he had one weakness. He liked to brag. He'd tell everybody how he could shoot a bird out of a tree from a mile away, or catch a fish with his bare hands. He once told how he wrestled 5 alligators at once just for the fun of it. Now the hunter had heard many legends about Great Bear, but had actually never seen her. He'd heard from those that had, though, that Great Bear was 10 times the size of a man. Her mighty roar would kill a man just out of fear. And it was no secret that the hunter had long wanted to kill Great Bear, for the hunter could have no greater trophy than her fur to wear around his waist. The hunter and Great Bear had one thing in common, though. They both loved the land to which they were born and roamed the countryside in awe and wonder of this world. Now, on the day Hunter finally met up with Great Bear, she was in no mood to be bothered. She'd taken her cubs out for a walk to the honey tree at the edge of the forest. She climbed the tree, and her paws were in the honeycomb. The bees were mighty furious, stinging her all about her nose and biting her tail. When she tried to swat at them, she lost her grip, and she fell to the ground. When she came to her senses, she heard one of her cubs cry out. She looked and saw that an arrow had pierced her cub's leg. She looked up and saw Hunter at the edge of the forest. She stood up on her great hind legs and roared. The ground shook. The trees swayed. The leaves fell. And the hunter's heart stopped cold. There she was, 10 times the size of Hunter. His knees buckled and his body shook. Great Bear came down on all fours and looked him in the eye. And as fast as any creature in heaven and earth, she ran straight for him across that open field. Hunter reached for an arrow and quickly shot her in the shoulder. She kept coming. He shot another. It hit her in the leg, but she didn't slow. He shot his last arrow. Hit her in the neck. Then she was upon him. And the last thing he saw was the breath steaming from her nose. When she hit him, he flew through the air a full 10 feet and landed on his back. She pounced on him, clawing and biting. Hunter struck back with his fists and knife, and they wrestled each other blow after horrible blow. For 2 days they fought, until neither could move. And when all was still, neither would live. And as their spirits lifted to heaven, They both shed tears for the land they loved so much. The hunter's tears fell to the earth like knives and swords and became the pointed leaves of the palm. And Great Bear cried tears of honey that can still be seen dripping from the trees here in the south during the evening's amber glow. Well, later in the evening, after I told my nephew this story, my sister saw him out in the backyard pulling moss out of the trees. He was eating it. She ran to stop him. When she asked him what he was doing, he replied, "I'm eating the honey from the trees, Mom." She smiled and asked, "How does it taste?" "Just like honey, Mom. Just like honey." Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Storyship Podcast. I want to invite you to visit us online, of course, at thestoryship.com, at thestoryship.com. And I also want to invite you to get in touch with us if you'd like to have us come work with your school or organization to create stories and create your own podcasts. We have a wonderful series of workshops, and we'd love to work with you. You'll find those again at thestoryship.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. See you next time.